A few days later, Ashley found an envelope on her desk. She opened it and saw the wedding invitation cordially inviting her and a guest to Latham and Samantha's nuptials. She scowled. Jack came by that morning and asked if she had received it. Not wanting to reveal her true feelings, she simply smiled and nodded. The day Oliver took over his family's business, Alexander had asked Mackenzie to come over. She despised him with all her heart and wished that she could kill him. He had been particularly aggressive that day, but it had worked in her favor. He didn't kiss her, so she took the initiative and kissed him instead, forcing him to open his mouth. She bit into the potent sleeping pill Jonathan had given her as soon as their lips locked. She had the antidote for it, so she wasn't worried about its effects on her. She sighed with relief when Alexander suddenly yawned a few minutes later and promptly fell asleep. Careful not to let her guard down, she watched him for a while to make sure he was out. She groaned loudly every now and again to give the impression that they were still going at it in case the housekeeper was eavesdropping. She then slipped quietly into Alexander's study and turned on his computer. Jonathan had given her a flash drive, which she inserted into the computer to gain access to his files. She sat back and waited anxiously for something to happen. She glanced around occasionally, making sure no one was outside the room. Her intense hatred for Alexander and her longing to be free of this whole mess forced her to be patient, even though she felt like jumping up and running away. She received a text from Jonathan several minutes later telling her that the files had been downloaded. She switched off the computer, hid the flash drive in her purse, and tiptoed back to Alexander's room. He was still sound asleep. She lay down next to him and stayed there until the following morning. When he finally woke up at 10 o'clock, he was groggy, but insisted on having sex. She left a half an hour later and didn't hear from him again. She tried to contact Jonathan, but he had already left the Davidsons to deal with an emergency back home. Alexander was still reeling from Jonathan's appointment of president of Sumoku Corporation. As vice president, he had very little authority and hoped that Matthew would at least let him run the company's Cuban operations. He had been so preoccupied with other things lately that he had no idea his rival was already in charge of the Cuban office. Alexander believed his big break had come when he heard rumors that Matthew was unhappy with Jonathan's performance with European operations and was considering revoking his earlier decision. He was overjoyed and not at all surprised. After looking into the matter and convincing himself he could solve the problem, he got on a plane and flew to Brussels, where the company's European headquarters were located. He went straight to the office, anxious to deal with the problem as soon as possible so he could show his father that he was capable of becoming his successor. He was in high spirits as he walked into the lobby and pressed the elevator button. A police officer in uniform suddenly stopped him. "Excuse me, sir. Are you Alexander Davidson?" He nodded. "I regret to inform you that you're under international investigation for acts of terrorism. We request your cooperation in the matter." Alexander was stunned. "What are you talking about? Acts of terrorism? What right do you have to do this?" The officer frowned. "I'm sorry, but I'm under orders to have you arrested. Please come with me." He signaled to some other officers standing nearby. "Is this a joke? Do you know who I am?" The officer shook his head. "This isn't a joke, sir. It's very serious. We have incriminating evidence against you. We were notified that you'd be here." Alexander had no choice but to obey. He followed the officers out of the building, where a police car was waiting to take him away. The internet was on fire again, with news about the Davis Group plane crash investigation, revealing that the aircraft had been tampered with before takeoff. But this time, the reports mentioned who had been behind it all. It was Alexander. Media outlets were also reporting his involvement in the Davis Group vehicle sabotage of the brakes, claiming he was a major shareholder of the company that had developed the car's brake system. Within a few hours, his name was all over the internet. The Davidsons had kept a low profile in their business dealings, But there was no stopping the spread of reports concerning Alexander's numerous criminal activities. As with any big news story, the media had dug up all the information it could about him. Several news outlets revealed that he was the son of a wealthy businessman in Cuba, a vice president and small shareholder of Sumoco Corporation, and the owner of 2 large golf courses in the U.S. There were also accounts of his various dealings in the car industry and his family's acquired wealth through the tire business. Matthew was shocked to see the news and called Jonathan immediately.
Hello, Matthew. I trust you've seen the news.
Jonathan, how could you do this? Alexander's your cousin. Jonathan was defensive.
Why didn't he think of that when he was trying to destroy me? I can't have him undermining me in my current position.
Matthew was silent for a while and then sighed with exasperation. I understand how you feel, but that's all in the past. I'm really disappointed by what you've done. You've just dragged our entire family's name through the mud. There will be grave implications for all of us. Jonathan had just finished a meeting and was staring out the conference room window while he was on the phone call.
Matthew, I wish I could trust my cousins. Nothing would make me happier than to see them run the business. But you know that's impossible. And I won't stand by for anyone threatening me or the people around me. I don't know how else to deal with Alexander.
Matthew was silent as he gazed off into the distance. He loved the Davidson villa and the acres of lush gardens around it. Their home was safe and secluded, overlooking Havana and the vast ocean. He suddenly wondered whether it had been worth it, but he knew he couldn't question his decisions and had to continue along the path he had chosen. All right, he finally said. I know you're the man for the job I appointed you to do.
You know I only took the position because I knew your sons couldn't handle it,
Jonathan said.
And now that I'm here, there's no going back. You have to trust me.
I understand. I think your father would be proud of you if you were alive today. They ended their conversation, and Jonathan looked at the online reactions to the news that had just broken. As he expected, everyone was outraged by Alexander's actions, especially the families of the plane crash victims. Justice is about to be served, he thought grimly. Those families will finally have peace of mind. He was happy to have helped the police catch his evil cousin. He called Nancy and told her to instruct Eduardo to release the next piece of evidence. Within an hour, audio recordings of Alexander telling his subordinates to retrieve the plane's black box and hide it after the crash surfaced on the internet. There was also a recording of him telling someone he didn't care how many people died in the plane crash and that they were simply a means to an end. He had given explicit instructions to a person on how to sabotage the plane and ensure that it crashed into the ocean at a specific altitude. Their conversation also revealed that the passengers were informed of the event right before it happened and told that their families would be compensated generously for their deaths. The world was shocked that someone could commit an act of terrorism and kill hundreds of people and have no remorse. Alexander's face appeared everywhere, and he soon became the most hated person on the planet. Many likened him to the devil and called for his immediate arrest without trial. Protests erupted on the streets of Brussels and in every major city globally. The Sumoco Corporation's social media account was filled with death threats against him. The government of Cuba had no authority to interfere because he had become an international criminal. Alexander soon realized that the problems at the Brussels branch had been nothing more than a trap that Jonathan had set to lure him over. He knew his father would never forgive him, and all his dreams of taking over the company suddenly vanished into thin air. He was thrown in jail and told he would be deported back to Cuba. A few hours before his departure, Jonathan went to see him in prison and noticed that his pale-faced cousin had already lost considerable weight. Alexander turned red with rage when he saw him. Are you satisfied? Is this what you wanted, you scumbag? You've just destroyed our entire family and everything that my father has worked for. I didn't realize just how satisfied I was until now. You deserved everything you got. I hope you rot in prison. Alexander banged his fist on the table, his nostrils flaring in anger. Just you wait. This isn't over. You won't be able to stay on top forever. Jonathan laughed. Is that so? And who's going to stop me now that you're about to spend the rest of your life behind bars? You were once number one, but now you're nothing. His cousin glared at him. How did you get those files? Jonathan leaned back in his chair and smiled. That's none of your business, he said in a low voice. Did you break into my computer? Did someone hand you the files? Tell me, you piece of shit. Jonathan said nothing and looked at him mockingly. He then stood up and buttoned his jacket. I'm sorry, but I need to go now. My wife's waiting for me back home. Have a safe trip back to Cuba and enjoy prison. He nodded to the guard and turned to leave. You won't get away with this, Alexander called after him. Did you ever notice that your wife bears a striking resemblance to Mackenzie? Do you know her true identity? Jonathan stopped in his tracks and looked at him. My wife is 1,000 times prettier than Mackenzie. Goodbye, Alexander. Shortly after, Alexander was taken to an armed car and driven to a private airport outside of Brussels. After arriving in Cuba, he was imprisoned without bail as he waited for his trial. Jonathan stayed in Brussels for a few more days to oversee operations there. Now that Alexander was no longer a threat, he knew he could count on full support of Sumoko's executives. Everything became much easier to handle. He attended a few meetings in Brussels, announced plans for expansion in Europe, and flew back to New York. Nancy was looking forward to seeing him. She had been busy with Brightstar and the launch of a new video game targeting women during the past few weeks. Things were back on track, and Xavier decided it was time to introduce Esther to his parents. Xavier's father, Justin, had been in process of handing the company over to Xavier for the past 2 years. Some days, he would go to the company, and other times, he would go with Teresa to their villa on the outskirts of the city, where they tended to a variety of vegetables and bird life. Xavier had told him about his girlfriend, and Justin had been looking forward to meeting her for a while. But Xavier had been so busy with work and associated business trips that it had never eventuated. Justin and Teresa were excited that Xavier had finally found the time to take his girlfriend home to meet them, and they went into a frenzy of preparation. The villa was cleaned from top to bottom, and they picked fresh vegetables to make a sumptuous lunch. Esther and Xavier arrived mid-morning, and they could both hear the excitement coming from behind the door as the housekeeper called his parents. Esther felt a little nervous for some reason, but she tried not to let it show on her face. She looked confidently at the woman in front of her and realized right away that Xavier had inherited his eyes from his mother. They were elegantly shaped and shone with intelligence, which was a combination that suited both the male and female features. His mother looked young and clearly took good care of herself. Although she had to be over 50, she looked to be in her 40s. Her eyes lit up when she saw Esther. You're Sabrina! She looked Esther up and down and then turned to Xavier. Is Sabrina really your girlfriend? Xavier found the whole situation funny. Yeah, Mom, that's right. Why didn't you say so earlier? Teresa asked. She seemed suddenly energized, and she moved to Esther's side and grabbed her hand excitedly. Have you really taken a fancy to my son? Esther's slight nervousness had been completely dispelled by Teresa's smile. Yes, Xavier's a good man. Xavier, however, wasn't thrilled with his mom's question. Mom, why would you ask that? How could you not have told me when you know I'm a fan of Sabrina's? She looked at him suspiciously. You never told me her name. Xavier was speechless for a second. It's not that I didn't want to tell you, but you never asked. Don't put it back on me, she frowned, and then turned to Esther. It's not that I didn't want to know your name, but I've been waiting for so long for my son to find a girlfriend that I had given up. I actually thought that perhaps he liked men. I didn't want to get my hopes up when he told me about you, so I didn't ask for details." Esther looked sideways at Xavier and winked. Her eyes were full of cunning as she eyed him up and wondered about the relationship between the mother and son. "Xavier was being honest," she said. "He's straight. He doesn't like men, and I am his real girlfriend." Teresa visibly relaxed at that point, and she held Esther's hand in both of her own to convey her excitement. "I really didn't think I would have someone so skilled as my daughter-in-law. I'm so happy. I use the perfume that you made for me every day. I think it really suits me." Teresa had been to Esther's shop before, and Esther had made perfume for her, but the two hadn't known each other then. Esther smiled. "Then I'll make you some more." She pulled Xavier over and maneuvered him in front of his mom. "You should smell him, because I made one for him too." Teresa pulled her son closer and sniffed. "It smells good." She then looked at Xavier again. "Didn't you say you hate perfume? When I spray the scent that Sabrina made for me, you still said it smelled bad. Why are you changing your tune now?" After that reveal, Esther immediately looked at Xavier in askance. "She sprayed too much on me," he hastily explained. "That's why I said that." "Liar," Teresa said. After mercilessly exposing her son, she guided Esther into the living room. "What do you like to eat? I'll ask my husband to make it for you this afternoon." "Anything is fine. I'm not fussy." As they were talking, they saw a man making his way down the stairs. Even though he was in his 50s, he cut just as fine a figure as his wife. He looked somewhat serious until he saw Esther. His expression became almost gentle as he looked at her. "Dad, this is Esther," Xavier said. "Esther, this is my dad." "Esther?" Teresa asked. "I thought it was Sabrina." "That's just a pseudonym she uses," Xavier explained. Esther greeted Justin politely. "There's no need to be super courteous in our family," Justin said. "You can treat this place as your own home." With that, he began to pour her some coffee. However, Xavier had gotten there first, and he placed a mug in front of Esther. "My dad is a man of few words. We're used to it, so don't feel you have to hold back." Esther was pleased to hear that, because she wasn't a particularly reserved person. Teresa pulled her into a conversation about fashion, pausing at one stage to ask Justin to cook. Esther felt a little embarrassed about not doing anything to contribute and offered to help. "He'll be fine," Teresa said. "Besides, Xavier can go, can't you?" Once he had left, she smiled again. "I suppose you don't know, but Justin cooks very well. It was actually his culinary skills that won my heart all those years ago. While he had the business to look after, he didn't have much time for it, but he's enjoying doing it more again now that he's handed over the reins." Esther was surprised by that, and she smiled. "Then I'm looking forward to trying what he cooks for us." She then took out a present that she brought with her and passed it to Teresa. "This is a limited edition E&N, and it's the only one available at the moment." Teresa was momentarily stunned. She took it out, and the shock intensified. "I've seen this ivory bag on the website. No one can get it." Her excitement was obvious. "How did you get it? I really liked it when I saw it, and I wondered why there weren't more." Her eyes widened as she put two and two together. "Wait, you're the designer? You're Sabrina, the designer, and Sabrina, the perfume manufacturer? I didn't realize you were the same person." Esther smiled and nodded. "Yep, that's why I was able to get you and Sydney those bags." "Oh my goodness," Teresa said excitedly. "I'm well past the age of hero worshipping, but there are two people I have recently admired. The first one is the designer at E&N called Sabrina, and the second one is the perfumer of the same name from Unique Perfumes. I remember thinking at the time that it was coincidental for them to have the same name, but I never thought that she would be the same person." She hugged Esther's arm. "And I never thought that she would be my daughter-in-law." She felt a little dizzy from all the surprises she had had that day. Esther smiled. If you want perfume or bags in the future, you can just ask. To get the perfume is simple enough, but the bag is a little harder. That requires more inspiration. Teresa nodded. I definitely have enough for now, but I'll let you know when the perfume's used up. I'm so happy right now. I think I need to digest everything that's happened. Esther found that she couldn't help herself from blurting out what she was feeling. You and Xavier are quite different, aren't you? That son of mine, Teresa sighed. If it wasn't for the fact that his eyes looked like mine and his nose and chin looked like his father's, I might have thought that they'd given us the wrong child. He's so stoic and taciturn and has been since he was young. It can get quite frustrating. Let's not talk about him anymore. I've got enough wrinkles on my face from him. As she was speaking, she saw Xavier enter the living room. He looked at her calmly. Teresa frowned and spoke without a shred of embarrassment on her face. Why don't you make any sound when you walk? Are you trying to sneak up on us? You were too engrossed in your conversation to hear me. I came to ask if you want the fish smoked or pan-fried. Esther and Teresa replied in unison. Smoked. He nodded and left with the same expression on his face. The two women looked at each other and then spoke at the same time again. Smoked fish can have such a strong flavor. Teresa laughed. You like heavy flavors too? She thought back to one of the most memorable meals that she and her husband had shared. Once, when Justin and I went on a vacation, there was a wood they used there that smelled bad when burning, but tasted delicious when infused into the food. He wouldn't eat it because the smell was so awful. He found the thought of me eating it so disgusting that he couldn't look at me, and he even insisted on sleeping in separate beds. He reckoned he could smell it even after I'd taken a shower. Esther's eyes lit up. I've heard of that before. I was planning to go and try it, but I haven't had a chance to go yet. Now I know that I must. Take Xavier with you, Teresa said. You two can try it together. Esther liked that plan. Xavier's not a foodie. He probably won't like the smell or the idea, but I'll drag him with me. Teresa looked at her conspiratorially. Yes, he's just like his father in that way. I reckon he'll be the same in expressing his dislike. The two women had managed to bridge the age gap and were behaving more like friends than potential in-laws. Teresa took Esther to her room to show her the fashion products that she had collected over the years. When she found something suitable for Esther, she stuffed it into her hands. I really can't wear this anymore. It's far too young for me. I still like it though, and would love to pass it on so that you can wear it for me to see. It wasn't in Esther's nature to reject such kindness, so she took everything offered with thanks. What is there to thank? Teresa asked. We'll be family soon. She continued to present treasures to Esther from other collections. When they were called downstairs to eat, Esther's hands were full. She was a little embarrassed, but her heart was warm. She knew that relationships between mothers and daughter-in-laws could be difficult, and she was very pleased that she wouldn't have that problem to worry about. She found a place for her newly acquired assets, washed her hands, and went to the dining table. She could see that Teresa had been truthful about Justin's cooking skills. If she hadn't known better, she would have thought that the meal had been cooked by a highly rated chef. There were 8 dishes on the table in front of her. The way the food was presented and the fragrance in the room was superb. She couldn't wait to taste it all. Esther sat down with everyone and tasted the starter. Instantly, the flavor of the meat, the onion, and the ginger swelled in her taste buds. She felt that the dish was restaurant quality with the additional taste of home. It almost moved her to tears. She finished her mouthful and met Justin's questioning gaze. She wasn't stingy with her praise. You must have done some training to make the most of your obvious talent for cooking. I've never eaten a beef carpaccio done so well. After that fulsome praise from her future daughter-in-law, a faint smile finally appeared on Justin's face, but it quickly disappeared and was replaced with humility. It's also because I loved to experiment when I was young. If you like it, you can have some more. And the next time that you come back with Xavier, I'll make it again. Okay. She was completely overwhelmed by the food and couldn't think of anything more polite to say. She tasted every dish on the table, and almost every item delighted her. The smoked fish had been expertly deboned and was fresh and tender. It had also been intensely spiced, and she couldn't stop eating. When Esther realized that she had let herself be transported by the food, she brought herself back down to earth. But she noticed that Teresa was enjoying the food just as much. The older woman looked at her husband. "You've outdone yourself today." Because she had an equally keen eating companion, Esther continued to indulge. When she realized that her stomach was full, and she could no longer stuff food in, she was a little vexed. She had been trying to lose weight for the wedding, and knew that she had just counteracted all her hard work. She realized that she would have to limit the number of times she visited her in-laws, but then decided that once a week would be okay. Everything was so much better than the food they made themselves. She touched Xavier's arm. "Your dad cooks so well. Why didn't you learn something from him?" She figured that he would use work as an excuse, but he gave a very different answer from the one she had been expecting. "When I find time in the future, I'll make sure I come and do just that." She didn't know that he was thinking that it was the first time he had seen her so genuinely enthusiastic about something. He wanted to continue to see that happiness and satisfaction in her eyes again. He also really wanted to learn to cook after eating the fish that Jonathan had cooked in Cuba. He felt like he needed to upskill to keep up with his mates. He would probably learn very quickly. He was clever, and his dad was an excellent chef. It wouldn't take long for him to learn everything from his father. Esther's self-control had always been poor, and she knew that if Xavier's cooking skills improved, she would gain 20 pounds. She had seen it happen to a woman on social media. The woman had been slim until she married a man who knew how to cook. In only 3 months, she had put on so much weight that she was unrecognizable. Esther silently broke out in a cold sweat at the thought. Xavier and Esther left his parents' house, and as Esther sat in the car on their way home, she sent a message to Nancy. "Xavier's father is an exceptional cook. My stomach is so round that I feel like I have to load up on digestive tablets when I get home." Nancy immediately replied, "How exceptional is exceptional?" "Well, I've been to many restaurants around the world, but I've never eaten like this. I couldn't stop eating." Esther sent a series of emoticons of laughing and crying. Nancy quickly sent a series of drooling emojis back. "That sounds amazing. I'm keen to join you and get some of that. You need to marry Xavier quickly so I can start freeloading off you." "You would make your best friend get married just for a few meals? I'm not sure that's okay." She followed that with a sad face emoticon. "If you marry him, you'll be able to eat delicious food every day, and that's got to be a good thing," Nancy said. "It's a good idea. Let me think about it." "Yes, but you need to remember to take me with you when you go to his parents again." Nancy thought for a while and then sent another message. "I've been trying to repair a water pipe and I'm exhausted. Some delicious food would be welcome." At the other end of the phone, Esther smiled and lay down on the back seat. "I'd love to see the powerhouses of the Davis Group actually repairing a water pipe." Nancy typed out a response, and Jonathan noticed her smile and moved closer. "What are you smiling about?" "I just heard that Xavier's father cooks very well. Have you eaten at his house?" He thought for a while and nodded. "I ate there when I was young. It was really good." "Make sure you take me next time," she said with starry eyes. "Do I ever leave you out? You make it sound like you never get fed." Nancy shook her head and chuckled. "Esther said it was delicious. She said it's some of the best food she's ever tasted. I want to try it." Jonathan knew he would have to give in to her eventually. "All right, We have a business event the day after tomorrow with Xavier's company. I'll ask Justin if we can go over for a meal afterward." She kissed him happily. "Great. I'm going to eat so much." Jonathan didn't always know which Nancy he was going to get. He usually saw her as mature and rational, but she would occasionally seem very childlike. "If you like eating so much, I'll get someone to teach me to cook when I have time." She shook her head. "No, you've got enough on your plate." He was indeed very tired. He had 2 companies to manage, plus the further distraction of issues with his Cuban family. Alexander had finally been sent back to Cuba, and the lightest possible punishment he would be facing was life imprisonment. Jonathan had gotten rid of his biggest problem, and he could finally relax a little. "How has Jacob been recently?" he asked. Before Jonathan left, he had arranged some work for Jacob to do, but he had been too busy to check in with him. "He's been studying hard recently," Nancy replied. She believed that Jacob was maturing as well as growing. He was almost 16, 5'10", and broad-shouldered. She sometimes wondered if she would have recognized him if she hadn't seen him grow up. "We should go visit him." "Okay," Jonathan replied. "We can go now if you want." When Jonathan and Nancy arrived at the villa where Jacob was staying, they pushed the door open and found Jacob reading a book. He looked up and greeted them excitedly when he saw them. He then went to help them with their luggage. Jonathan patted Jacob on the shoulder. "How have you been?" "Good. My teacher was happy with my research project that I did on Santa Fe." Although he had been caught in the fire in Santa Fe, his laptop had survived, and all the information had been retained. He had, therefore, been able to complete his investigation report successfully, and he had already finished his lessons for the year. "That's great," Jonathan said. "I'll introduce you to the Franklin Group soon." Jacob's body trembled when he heard that. "The Franklin Group?" "Yes." Jonathan looked at him seriously. "Jacob, the Franklin Group was your family's, so you'll inherit it sooner or later. Although you still need to go to college, you'll also have to get familiar with the business." "But what could they want with me?" "You're the biggest shareholder of the Franklin Group and control all the shares that you've inherited from your parents. You have the absolute right to be there. And don't worry about Cuba. Once I have control of the whole situation, no one will dare to harm you. So, Jacob, it's almost time to take back your identity." Jacob understood that he would be responsible for making that happen. He was no longer a young boy. He was the Johnson family heir and the biggest shareholder of the Franklin Group. He knew that he couldn't always rely on Jonathan and that he needed to grow and learn to look after the tens of thousands of employees at Franklin. At the same time, he was driven to take back everything that had been taken from him and his sister. "I understand," Jacob said. "I'll do my best to be ready." Jonathan was satisfied with what he had seen, and he gave the young man a pat on the back as acknowledgement. "I heard that it's your 16th birthday in a couple of days." Jacob nodded. "How do you plan to celebrate?" Jonathan asked. "I really don't care about my birthday." "I'll take you somewhere then," Jonathan said. "Didn't I promise to take you hunting? I couldn't go earlier because of my family issues, but I can now." "Really?" Jacob's eyes lit up. "That's great." He took Nancy's arm. "Are you also going to come?" "I'll come on the trip with you, but I won't do any hunting," she said as she stretched. "I'll see what you come back with, and then I'll be responsible for eating it." Jacob nodded. "Yeah, I know it's not your sort of thing. Leave it to us." Jonathan raised his eyebrows and looked at Jacob probingly. "Do you have a girlfriend?" Jacob started blushing and got defensive. "What? No, of course not." Jonathan hooked his arm around Jacob's shoulder. "Tell the truth." He lowered his head and asked quietly, "How serious?" Jacob's ears instantly turned red. "We've only got as far as holding hands, and I don't even know if she's my girlfriend." Jonathan laughed. "It's okay. I'm only teasing." I guess you're still a pure young man." He thought for a second. "But hunting could be boring with just the two of us men. I'll call a few more friends, and we'll invite Henry. You guys are in the same year, so you should have a lot to talk about." "Okay," Jacob said enthusiastically. He was really looking forward to his birthday all of a sudden. He couldn't help but think of the year when Stark had hung out with him on his birthday. There had been candles and a birthday cake, but no warmth at all. He hadn't been aware of everything that had been going on, and he would never have thought that things would go as far as they had. He had grown up substantially since then. He had found out that his sister was still alive and had realized just how much of his life had been a lie. They decided on a date for their hunting trip. Nancy also invited a few friends to join them. She decided it was a more the merrier scenario and called Emma and Peter as well. She knew that she, Esther, and Ashley wouldn't hunt and would probably only be responsible for eating the spoils. When the hunting weekend came around, Nancy, Jonathan, and Jacob drove straight to a manor on the outskirts of the city. Henry had wanted to join them, but he wasn't able to go. The place they were staying at belonged to Jonathan, as did the ground they were going to hunt on. The three of them arrived relatively early, as did Esther and Xavier. Thus, the four adults started chatting about wedding matters, and they were still talking animately when they saw Latham arrive. He had come by himself. "You didn't bring your fiancée?" Jonathan asked. "She's pregnant and resting at home." Latham was getting more and more depressed because he had the double whammy of his father being sick and the prospect of marrying a woman that he didn't feel anything for. Samantha didn't seem to have any feelings for him either. They rubbed along okay, but they didn't have a lot to say to each other. In the past couple of days, his father's health had improved a lot. Nothing much was going on at the company either, so he decided to take the opportunity to relax with friends. "When's your baby due?" Xavier asked. "April, next year." "What star sign would that make him or her?" Nancy asked. She did some mental calculations and then thought of something else. "Esther, you and Xavier might be able to time your wedding with Latham and Samantha's." "A joint wedding," Esther said thoughtfully. "That could be okay." She knew that they had to hold one wedding in Cuba and one in the U.S. "We're looking at next month," Latham said. "Would you guys be able to plan it in time?" As he spoke, he heard people approaching. He turned to look, and any further words stuck in his throat. Ashley hadn't expected Latham to be there because she had heard from Jack that he had been very busy and had no time for anything unrelated to work or the wedding. It was the only reason that she had agreed to go. She also wouldn't have expected him to be there without his fiancée. Esther didn't know about the undercurrent between Ashley and Latham, so she continued with their wedding talk. She tapped Xavier's arm. "I don't think it's going to work. Our engagement party in Cuba is only next month, so a wedding then would be too soon for us." Xavier agreed. "We won't be able to organize it in time. However, if you need a groomsman, I'll be there." Beside him, Esther raised her hand. "I want to be a bridesmaid." Nancy gazed around the group. "Maybe Ashley can be one too." Unwittingly, Latham's gaze drifted toward Ashley. Her face froze for a moment, but she covered it quickly and broke into a smile. "Yeah, sure, if they want me to be one." Latham didn't want to continue with that topic and tried to cut it short. "I think we'll just make it simple. We'll go to City Hall, and then we'll have a meal together with a few friends and family. There's no need for formalities, and no need for groomsmen and bridesmaids." "Because of your father's health?" Jonathan asked. Latham nodded. "Nothing's been set in stone, so the simpler the better. I don't want it to be too much for him. You should come and visit him soon." He was doing his best to change the direction the conversation was going in. "Sure," Jonathan replied. The next lot of newcomers chose that moment to arrive. Steve stopped his car, and two others emerged from it. Helga was there, and she was dressed in the same clothes she usually wore. A green shirt with white pants. Her black hair was tied back into a long ponytail. Katie, on the other hand, was wearing sportswear. She looked youthful and energetic. Not long after that, Peter and Emma also arrived. They had Dorian in the car with them. "We came straight from the company," Peter said as he approached the group. "Dorian insisted on coming with us. He said you invited him." Dorian shrugged and greeted everyone. He introduced himself to those he hadn't met yet. "Hello, everyone. I'm Dorian." "Do you know how to ride horses?" Jonathan asked. Dorian jumped up enthusiastically in response to the question. "I've been riding since I was 7 years old." Jonathan didn't want to go into it further, and he just nodded. Dorian ran to Katie. "Hey there, what's your name?" "Katie, sir." "Sir?" The expression on Dorian's face was priceless. "I'm young and handsome, and you call me sir?" "I forgot to introduce you," Jonathan said. "This is my niece Katie." He looked up at Dorian. "Be nice to her." Dorian froze, and he quickly waved the suggestion away. "Of course I'll be nice. What do you take me for?" As he spoke, his phone rang, and the look on his face changed after he answered the call. "There's a setting in the game that needs to be changed. Damn it, why is it today?" He looked gloomily at Nancy as he turned to leave. "Thanks for the invitation, but I'm a dedicated worker and won't be able to stay. I think I deserve an extra bonus." Nancy smiled. "Okay, I'll double your pay." Everyone had arrived, so Jonathan led them all to the hunting grounds. Once there, he handed them over to the hunting specialist, who took them through a hunting crash course. It was then time for them to all choose their horses. Nancy knew how to ride, but she had her period and was tired, so she decided to sit it out. Esther leaned close and spoke right into her ear. "We're good friends indeed, because our cycles are in sync. We'll rest and let them hunt and cook for us." Nancy smiled, and then turned and reminded Jonathan to watch Jacob. She found a reclining chair and placed it under the shade of the tree to listen to music with Esther. Katie was young, and her mother had never let her ride a horse, so she didn't know how to. She took out an exercise book to entertain herself and stayed with the two women. Ashley's body had fully recovered since her miscarriage, and she had loved to ride with Brock when they had been overseas. She told Jonathan that she would be joining them. Jonathan picked a white horse for Jacob and a chestnut for Ashley. He then saw Helga leading a thin black horse out. "I don't think that horse is strong enough, Helga," he said. Helga dismissed his warning with a shake of her head. "I'm just going for a walk. Whether I can catch anything is up to fate." Steve looked at her suspiciously and felt the need to intervene. "If you don't know how to ride, you should stay here. Otherwise, you might hurt yourself." However, Helga had already left by the time he had finished speaking. Helga was calm and composed as she rode away at a leisurely pace. Steve held his breath as he watched her go, but he eventually picked a horse and was off. Peter, Lotham, and Emma had also chosen their horses. "All right, we're ready to go," Jonathan said. He turned to Ashley and Jacob. "Don't go too far. If anything goes wrong, just shout for me." Even though the horses they were riding were all relatively small, they were still horses, and it would be dangerous to fall. They all rode straight out into the rolling hills. Jonathan had been there before. He knew where the animals were likely to be and where they weren't, and it only took 10 minutes before he saw a pheasant. He took it out with his rifle and threw it into the pack on the horse's back. Once he had hunted a few more, and the pack was getting close to full, he headed back instead of continuing. Nancy was listening to music when she saw Jonathan riding toward her. His horse went straight to her, and he jumped down. "Do you want to come for a ride now?" She had taken some painkillers and decided that she would. She paused for a second. "Wait for me." She quickly went to the bathroom to freshen up and was soon back. "Okay, let's go," she said to him before turning back to Esther. "Do you want us to tell Xavier to come over and pick you up?" She shook her head. No need. I feel sleepy, so I'll just take a nap. Nancy left with Jonathan. As soon as he lifted her into the saddle, the horse took off for the hillside. She sat in the front and he sat behind her. He held the reins with one hand and the other tightly held her waist. Her back was pressed against his chest, and she could feel his heartbeat, which seemed exceptionally powerful. She suddenly remembered a time long before when they had ridden together in the same way. They hadn't been together at that time. What are you thinking about? He asked pleasantly. Are you thinking about who's going to bring back the most meat? She looked at his backpack, and he kissed her cheek. I think I'm going to win. She smiled. No, actually, I think it's good to treat it as a form of leisure, not a competition. There's a place I know where we can get some good photos. When I passed by earlier, I wanted to take you there. As he spoke, he guided the horse in a different direction. They turned a corner, and Nancy saw large patches of flowers. It's so beautiful, she said. Let's get down and take some pictures. Jonathan pulled the horse to a stop and jumped down. He then stretched his arm toward Nancy. She fell right into his arms, and he gently placed her on the ground by his side. The horse started eating the grass that surrounded them. Nancy stood in the flowers, and Jonathan took out his camera from the saddle pack. He took many pictures and just couldn't resist stopping for a kiss. She grinned at him and fell to the ground. Her black hair spread out in the sea of flowers, and her beautiful face seemed to shine even brighter. He was moved by the image, and he was about to kiss her again when he heard the sound of hooves coming from afar. They straightened up and spotted Jacob on his way over. When Jacob saw the two of them, he smiled happily. He jumped off his horse. Don't move. Your pose is perfect. I'll take a picture of you. The hunt had turned into a photo shoot. When they were done taking pictures, Nancy stood up and went over to Jacob's bag to see what he had caught. Are you serious? Why didn't you get anything? I couldn't find any animals. Maybe I scared them away. Follow me, Jonathan said. I'll show you how to do it. All right, Jacob replied with a gleam in his eyes. Jonathan cradled Nancy with one hand and controlled the horse with the other as they hunted their prey. Nancy felt as though she was bouncing around on the saddle at times, but Jonathan kept his presence behind her firm and steady. Under Jonathan's guidance, Jacob finally caught a wild rabbit. He was so excited that he vaulted off his horse with one leap and ran straight to pick up the animal. Nancy hadn't seen him so happy in a long time. The last time that she could recall was when their parents had still been around, and he had gotten first prize in a competition. Her heart was filled with gratitude and joy, and she turned to kiss the man behind her. His pupils immediately constricted, and his Adam's apple rolled. I thought you were on your period. Nancy wasn't sure how to respond. Yeah, and? I just wanted to kiss you. But you're making me want to do other things, Jonathan said meaningfully. Nancy was a little confused. Like what? Jonathan bent closer to her ear. Give me a kiss and you'll understand. There are plenty of places we can hide away if you want to keep going. Nancy felt herself being lulled by the sound of the horse's hooves as they slowly walked on. They created the perfect background for his soft and magnetic voice. She felt a lot of things at once and sighed when she realized it wasn't to be. She also questioned his moral integrity in front of her brother. Jonathan bit Nancy's ear and whispered into it. Feel free to carry on. Jacob was behind them. From his angle, he couldn't see anything apart from Jacob whispering in his sister's ear. Jonathan was tall, and he blocked Nancy from Jacob's view completely. He couldn't see that her face was completely red. Hey, there's a river in front of us, Jacob said when the bottom of the hill was revealed. Jonathan nodded. There are also many animals there. We can go and take a look. Jacob responded excitedly again. Okay. Ashley was sitting by the river. She had had a good day and had made 3 kills. She had realized that it was about time to call it a day and had chosen not to continue. She had spotted the river and ridden toward it. Once there, she had tied her horse to a tree, found a clean stone to sit on, and listened to the song of her surroundings. She sensed movement and noticed Helga was approaching. She smiled and nodded. She was about to look away when she noticed that the other woman had stopped right in front of her. "I can tell that you're feeling a bit weak," Helga said in her very direct manner. Ashley smiled. "I'm just tired." "No," Helga said. She wasn't one to beat around the bush. "A few days ago you had surgery, and you haven't completely recovered." Sitting so close to her was torture for him, but there was nothing he could do anymore. What was done was done. He couldn't give her hope that they still had a chance together. He felt a deep sense of temptation to be close to her, to care for her, and to be intimate. He had been aware of her developing feelings for him, and then, when she had said she wasn't interested, he had decided that it wasn't so bad, and had started to enjoy their blossoming casual friendship. But then, he had continued to flirt with her. He had watched her fall helplessly in love with him until that fateful night. She had been right when she had told him off at the hospital. He was trash. He had taken advantage of her, and he had been irresponsible. He should have known better. He should have maintained a professional relationship instead of flirting with her. In the end, his weakness caused him to make another woman pregnant. He understood why she had said that all he had done was lie to her from the beginning to the end. He lowered his head and smiled bitterly while he scratched in the dirt with a small twig. He took a deep breath, sighed, and then stood up. As he walked toward the grazing horses, he noticed the bag strapped to the back of her horse. It was heavy with the small animals she had hunted that morning. He was surprised that she had a much larger catch than him. Ashley had many hidden talents, and she had matured a lot. She was no longer afraid to go out and do things she had always been too scared to do. She had a sterling reputation wherever she went. Even her ex-colleagues at Latham's company still spoke highly of her. Latham missed her. He sighed and quietly led his horse back into the forest. Ashley didn't look around. She continued to listen to the music playing through her earphones, but the melodies were no longer pleasing. Instead, she felt frustrated and switched the music off. She then clicked on the video game app and joined a new game. Suddenly, Peter heard a notification buzz on Ashley's phone. He looked at her and noticed that she had become fixated on her phone. He walked out of the bushes and approached her. She didn't know that he had been watching her for a while, so she smiled when she saw him. Peter immediately recognized the video game tune playing on her phone. He was surprised. "I didn't know you played that game." "Yeah, I like to support Nancy's endeavors. It's quite a lot of fun." He grinned. "Yeah, it is. Designing it took us a long time, but I think it turned out well." He sat down next to her. "What's your gaming name?" Ashley didn't look up from her phone, and therefore didn't see the shock on Peter's face when she replied. "It's Foxy." Peter was astonished. "Your gaming name is Foxy? What does your avatar look like?" Ashley looked at him and showed him her screen. "It's the little orange fox below my name." He didn't reply, but quickly looked at the notification on his phone. Foxy had entered your game. Go to sector 309 to play. He glanced at her, muted his phone, and clicked enter. Ashley had been worried that she would have to play alone, but her eyes lit up when she saw the notification that Galaxy had accepted her request and had joined her. She quickly typed a message. "Hi, I thought you were busy this weekend." Peter typed a response. "Why didn't you call me?" She smiled. "I thought you were on a date and didn't want to disturb you." He replied with a smiley face emoticon. "I think you're trying to ask me if I'm single." Ashley chuckled softly. "How do I know you're not some sleazy old man? or shacked out with a house full of kids. Peter didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You'll be happy to know I'm still in my 20s. I'm tall and slim, I don't have a beer belly, and no children either. She laughed. That doesn't mean you're hot. You could be 12 years old and might have used someone else's identity to register. You've probably just started high school. You'd have to call me by surname if you were to meet me. Peter thought about Katie, who was still a schoolgirl. Ashley's wild imagination was too much for him. He rubbed his forehead. I suppose I'll have to prove my age next time. But believe me, I'm neither a schoolboy nor an old man. Their friendly banter had lifted Ashley's depressed mood. She forgot about Latham and quickly urged Galaxy to start playing. Okay, Wise Sage, let's play. She didn't know the player's real name. She had always known him by his gaming name and knew his rank as Wise Sage. No matter how hard she played, he always stayed 2 levels higher than her. However, after a successful strike, she jumped to the next level. Peter watched her progress and messaged, Okay, Foxy, let's do this. The other players weren't too proficient, and Ashley didn't take long to win 3 rounds in a row. She started the 4th round feeling confident, but her opponent was too strong and began to pummel her. Suddenly, she noticed that her teammate had disappeared. Her opponent and his team began to attack, and she had to take cover to heal herself. She looked around, but couldn't find her Galaxy. She tried to run, but her opponent was hot on her heels. And she didn't have time to type a message. Desperate, she spoke into the tiny microphone in her earphone controller. Galaxy? Are you out there? Where are you? There was no response. Peter looked at his phone, frustrated. He had worked late the day before and had forgotten to charge his phone. The battery was completely flat. He knew Ashley's opponent would be too strong for her to fight off alone. She would probably drop a level or 2 if she lost the round. He had noticed her excitement as she had moved up a level, and he didn't want her to be disappointed when she lost. He leaned over and asked, Do you want me to help you? She was about to reject his offer when she remembered he was an outstanding gamer. He was legendary in the sports game circuit and had designed the game she was currently playing. I won't find anyone better to help me than him, she thought. She looked at him and grinned happily. Okay, save me. Peter quickly took her phone and surveyed the situation. Her health status had dropped to below the quarter mark. He scurried around and found a health kit hidden behind a corner. He quickly healed her avatar and located 2 other teammates on the battlefield. Ashley watched in amazement as he used the most straightforward techniques to his advantage. Had it not been her phone and gaming avatar, she would have thought he had used cheat patchers. His movements were smooth and effortless. He shot from the trickiest of angles as, one by one, his opponents fell. The battle soon began to turn in his favor. She gasped. Wow, Peter, you're amazing. I thought it was over for me. I was getting ready to deal with being cut down a level or 2, but you've just wiped the enemy off the board. Peter smiled as his slender fingers quickly tapped the screen. How long have you been playing this game for, Foxy? She blushed. Not that long. Maybe just over a month or so? I've been playing with a gamer called Galaxy. He's also ranked as a Wise Sage, but he's nowhere near as good as you. I suppose that's because you designed the game. Is that so? How do you know he's a Wise Sage? Peter swiftly finished off another opponent as he spoke. It's quite an interesting story. I have a gamer account, but I haven't logged in for many years. I had to log in to register for this game and received his friend request. Anyone with a gamer account seems to be automatically connected to this game. The gamer account displays your information, such as your ranking status. His profile says he's a Wise Sage. Peter whistled slowly. So, you've known each other for many years? Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, only on gaming platforms. I don't remember when we connected as friends on the gaming account. Maybe you've seen him before but didn't know it. Peter looked at Ashley. Focus on the game. She paused for a moment. I doubt it. Besides, I would have learned his name if I had met him somewhere. Maybe at a gaming convention. All I know is his gaming rank and gaming name. There's no other information about him. It must be fate. Peter smiled and quickly tapped the screen. Suddenly, something in the distance of the game exploded. Ashley looked at him with astonishment. How did you do that? Have we won? He grinned as he passed the phone back to her. We have, and you've gone up by a level. Her eyes lit up as she looked at her score. That was amazing! I'm so lucky. I would have been completely wiped out if it hadn't been for you. Peter smiled happily. It's nothing. Besides, you're my boss's sister. I may need your help someday. Ashley laughed. I doubt it. You're awesome. Thanks so much. If you want to go up another level, just ask me. I'll help you anytime. She narrowed her eyes and thought, I should play a few more rounds, seeing as I have him right next to me. Ashley quickly started a new game and turned to Peter. I wonder if you've ever played with Galaxy before. He also sometimes goes by Starjumper. I wonder where he disappeared to. Maybe his battery died. Peter shrugged. There are so many players. I might have seen him before, but I don't recall. She looked at him and had a sudden thought. What's your gaming name? He paused momentarily and quickly said a name everyone on the internet knew. I'm sure you know it. It's Blackwing. Ashley grinned. The legend himself. But I haven't seen you online before. I know that fans often take screenshots when they play with you. They post the screenshots on the gaming forum. I've seen 3 posts like that already. Peter smiled. I'll let you know next time I play, and then you can also take a screenshot. That's great, but I don't have your number. Why don't you give me a missed call? Then you have my number, and I'll have yours. Peter pretended to unlock his phone. Sorry, my phone's battery is flat. Not willing to give up on a potential screenshot with Blackwing, she quickly replied. It's okay. Give me your number and I'll send you a message. You can save my number once you've charged your phone and you see my message. He recited his phone number as she made a new contact and saved it under Peter Blackwing. Great, saved. Now let's play another round. Will you guide me? Peter nodded, and they threw themselves into a new game. When Jonathan and the others arrived at the stream, they found Ashley and Peter engrossed in the video game. They barely acknowledged them with a nod before returning their focus to the phone's screen. Jonathan was surprised to see Ashley looking so happy, and he decided not to worry about her as much, thinking that he had perhaps jumped to conclusions too quickly. His phone rang, and he pulled it out of his pocket to answer. Latham? Yeah, we're next to the stream. Come and join us. He dismounted and helped Nancy down. They went over to see what Ashley and Peter were playing. Nancy took her phone out and excitedly logged in. Come on, Jonathan. I'm pretty good at this game. I'll teach you. Jonathan sighed and looked at the images on the screen. He felt a headache coming on. He had never been much of a gamer. He was an expert in real-life combat, but had no experience in online gaming. He realized he had no choice but to download the gaming app and register his online account. He signed up and tried to join Nancy on the battlefield. He had no idea how the game worked or what he had to do. Nancy grinned and laughed. Oh no, I think I'm going to be killed. He sat down next to her and kissed her on the cheek. Don't worry, darling. I'll rescue you. She smiled happily and leaned against him. However, he struggled to join her specific game and frustratedly tapped his phone screen. Jacob, who had been quietly watching the fiasco, couldn't bear it any longer and helped him locate Nancy. Luckily for Jonathan, he had a keen sense of direction, and it didn't take him long to find her. Her health bar hovered below 50%. Unarmed, and starting at the lowest level possible, he ran in front of her and tried to block the attacks. As expected, their opponents punched him and he fell to the ground. But just before he took the last knock, he stopped a strike aimed at Nancy. Even though it was just a game, the scene was all too familiar, and she felt touched by his actions. Back then, when they had first met, she had been hesitant and didn't want to fall for him. But even then, he had protected her. He had been seriously injured, and his body had been bleeding profusely. But he had shielded her from harm, and that was when she knew, deep in her heart, that she could put the pain of her past behind her and embrace her new life. She knew she had found someone who she could trust. Nancy relished in the warmth that flooded her heart as she gazed at the man beside her. But they were still playing a game, and soon enough, she was struck and fell beside him. She looked at their avatars on the screen and felt tears in her eyes. We weren't born in the same year, month, and day, but I hope that one day we die together on the same day, month, and year. Jacob had also joined the battle and messaged Jonathan. I see you don't know what you're doing. Nancy read the message and immediately replied. Only because he doesn't have time to play. If he did, I bet he'd be a wise sage by now too. Jacob looked up from his phone and glared at Nancy. She always took Jonathan's side. She seemed to love her husband more than she loved him. Jonathan and Nancy logged out and put their phones back in their pockets. Jonathan put his arm around her shoulders and sighed. We seldom get time to relax. Let's sit here and rest for a while. Nancy nodded and leaned her head against his shoulder. Jacob glanced around. Ashley and Peter were engrossed in their game, and his sister and brother-in-law stared aimlessly at the bubbling stream. He felt like a third wheel. The sound of horse hooves filled the air, and Jacob saw Latham galloping in the distance. He suddenly felt glad that he wasn't the only third wheel anymore. Latham, however, didn't notice the look in Jacob's eyes. Instead, his gaze landed on Ashley and Peter. He tethered his horse to a branch, but didn't take his eyes off them. They were at a critical moment in the game, and Ashley seemed nervous and excited. Quickly! There are 2 more coming. I'm running out of blood. Peter leaned in closer to her. Jump to the left. Now run. Okay, stop there. Look behind the wall. There should be something for you to replenish your blood with. Ashley laughed. You're right. That's amazing. She looked at Peter. My wise sage, you're a miracle worker. Peter beamed. Watch out. There's someone behind you. Ashley tapped the screen and let out an excited cry. He came out of nowhere. I got him. Look at all the points I just earned. Her eyes lit up. I've gone up another level. She laughed happily, and her eyes sparkled. Latham felt a lump in his throat as he saw her joyful expression. He remembered how she smiled like that when they celebrated winning the contract. Subconsciously, his breathing became heavy, but he forced a smile on his face. He had to be happy for her. She deserved it. She had started her new life without him. Besides, he wouldn't be able to offer her anything anymore. After Ashley had finished another round of the game, she looked up and realized that almost everyone had come to the stream. She slipped her phone back into her pocket and greeted everyone. She saw Latham and hesitated for a moment, but smiled politely. Hello, Latham. He smiled back at her. Hello, Ashley. Jonathan walked over to them. Has anyone seen Steve and the others? Latham shrugged. I haven't seen them. I think they're still hunting. Jonathan stretched his arm and walked toward the horses. Let's wait for them. He took a look at everyone's bags strapped to their horses. When he saw a large bulge in Ashley's bag, he raised his eyebrows in surprise. Well done, Ashley. You're quite the hunter. She laughed. Am I the best among the girls? He smiled. You're on par with Nancy. He had been surprised by Nancy's hunting skills the first time he had taken her out. She had hit almost all her targets with one shot and made it look easy. But she hadn't hunted on this trip because she hadn't felt up to it. Ashley nodded. You're right. She's really good. She beat me in the last competition. She looked around and frowned slightly. I'm not sure how good Helga is. When I'd last seen her, She didn't seem to have caught anything. Latham smirked. Maybe she's a vegetarian. Peter had just met Helga that day, and she had left an unusual impression on him. He knew she was a talented doctor and had heard she had incredible healing powers. Maybe she doesn't hunt. Meanwhile, Helga had reached a deep gully in the forest. She led her horse through the thick underbrush, and it seemed entirely at peace. Steve followed closely behind her. He picked up a wild rabbit he had just shot and put the lifeless body into his saddlebag. He had been observing Helga the whole time while they had been out hunting. She had only stopped to pick a few flowers and plants, but he hadn't seen her try to shoot anything. She had also been walking next to her horse a lot, and he started to wonder if she knew how to ride. He mounted his horse again and rode in Emma and Xavier's direction. Emma and Xavier had just arrived back near the stables where they had left Katie and Esther. Xavier thought of many beautiful spots he wanted to take Esther to. Katie was sitting under the shade of the tree and was focused on her schoolwork when she noticed a shadow looming over her. She looked up and squinted in the bright sunlight. Her heart leaped when she saw Emma on a majestic white horse. The sun shone behind her, and her body seemed to glow in a layer of golden light. Emma's horse trotted slowly toward her. The large horse's shadow merged with Katie's. Emma smiled softly. Hi, Katie. You're working hard again? Katie blushed slightly. I have to. I want to get into New York City University. I need a very high score if I want to study robotics like you. So, you really like the world of robotics, do you? Emma squinted her eyes at Katie. Katie smiled. Yeah. She looked down at her notebook. Just as much as I like you, she thought. Why don't you take a break? I'll take you to find your uncle. He should be there with the others. Emma pointed in the direction of the stream. Katie looked puzzled. Do you want me to ride with you? Emma laughed. Of course. How else? Come on, I'll help you up. Katie looked over at Xavier and Esther. Xavier had helped Esther onto his horse before he had mounted the animal himself. They trotted past Emma and Katie. See you in a while. Xavier waved before they galloped away. Katie nodded and packed up her belongings. She stood up and approached the horse cautiously. She hadn't ridden a horse before. Emma dismounted and put her hands around Katie's slim waist. She had grown taller since they had last seen each other. She lifted her onto the saddle and pulled herself up using the stirrup and reins. Katie immediately became aware of Emma's warm body behind her. She smelled the combination of perfume and sweat and felt an electric tingle in her spine. Emma leaned over and took Katie's hands in hers before placing them on the front edge of the saddle. Hold on to this. Don't let go. Emma tugged the reins and the horse began to trot. Emma hadn't done much riding in her life. She had only done a few scenic rides, but the morning's hunt had made her more confident. Emma put her one arm around Katie's waist and held the reins with her free hand. Katie held tightly onto the saddle. Katie noticed her hands were much smaller than Emma's, making their age difference more apparent. She felt like she just wasn't growing up fast enough. The distant mountain grew closer as they galloped across the fields and along the forest. A widening stream appeared through the trees. Suddenly, Emma jerked at the reins for the horse to stop. Katie looked over her shoulder at Emma. What's wrong? There's a wild rabbit in the field up ahead. You stay here while I try to catch it. She had only just gotten comfortable riding a horse and hadn't caught anything yet. She had to catch something before they met up with the others. The rabbit looked up at her, but didn't dart away. She raised her gun and aimed. Just as she was about to pull the trigger, she heard Katie call out. Stop! The rabbit is injured. Please don't kill it. Emma shook her head in dismay. We've come to hunt the rabbits today. They're nothing more than our dinner. Katie bit her lip and forced back her tears. Not this one. We have to help it. She gazed at the little animal as it tried to limp to safety. It had a wide, bleeding gash in its leg. It was no wonder it couldn't run away. Katie looked at Emma with tears in her eyes. Please help me down. Emma sighed and rubbed her head. Okay. She carefully helped Katie onto the ground. Katie immediately ran toward the little rabbit. The injured animal instinctively tried to run away, but couldn't due to its injured leg. Katie bent down and swiftly caught it. She held it tightly and whispered, "It's all right, sweet little bunny. Don't fuss. You've hurt your leg." Emma watched as the girl cooed over the injured rabbit. Katie wrapped a tissue from her pocket around the animal's leg like a bandage to stop the bleeding. She pressed the tissue on the wound for a few minutes until she felt satisfied that the bleeding had stopped. Then she turned to Emma. "Let's take it home with us." She had a few strands of grass in her hair, and her clothing had been stained by the rabbit's blood and dirt under its paws. Emma's heart melted at the innocent girl's empathy. "Okay, sure. It can come with us." Katie grinned. "Do you promise not to eat it?" Emma leaned over and pulled the grass out of Katie's hair. "Don't worry, I won't eat it." Katie looked at Emma pensively. "Do you think I've grown taller?" "Yeah, it seems like it. When did I last see you? 2 months ago?" She stretched out her hand and touched Katie's head. "At least half an inch." "I thought so. I wonder how tall I'll be when I get to college. I might even be as tall as you." Emma smiled and subconsciously rubbed Katie's head. "You better eat all your dinner to grow taller." She thought about her sister and wondered if she would be the same age as Katie by now had she not died. "Okay, bunny lover, let's get going." Katie grabbed the reins and steadied herself with one hand while Emma pushed her on to the saddle. She held the rabbit tightly in her other hand. Slightly concerned, Emma made sure to remind Katie to hold on tight. "You only have one hand. Hold on tight when we go down the hill. The horse will gallop fast." Katie blushed a deep shade of red as Emma leaned close against her. They soon arrived at the stream where the others had been waiting. Everyone was there except for Helga. Jonathan pulled his phone out of his pocket and called her. "I'll be there soon. I just stopped to pick a few herbs." "Okay, we're going to start preparing the meal in the meantime." Jonathan had arranged for the lodge staff to bring everything they needed for the grill. One of the staff members skinned and cleaned the carcasses, while another prepared the fire. A chef began to season the meat. Jonathan had caught the most rabbits, followed by Ashley, and then Latham and Steve tied in third place. Ashley had caught one more rabbit than the two of them. Jacob, Peter, and Xavier had far less than the others. Everyone turned to Emma and Katie. Emma's bag was empty, and Katie clutched a small rabbit tightly in her arms. "This one is mine. You're not allowed to eat it." They all burst out laughing. The sound of galloping hooves filled the air, and they saw Helga racing toward them at top speed. Her long ponytail danced in the wind, and she looked ethereal as she effortlessly held onto the reins. She seemed calm and peaceful. She gently tugged at the reins as she approached, and the horse stopped. She swiftly dismounted and tethered the horse next to the others. Her movements were smooth and natural. Steve was puzzled. He didn't understand why she hadn't ridden the horse earlier. Ashley looked over at Helga curiously and whispered to Peter, "Did she catch anything?" Peter chuckled softly. "She's a doctor, not a hunter." Helga took the bag off her horse and walked over to them. She seemed unfazed as she explained her catch. "I caught 2 pheasants and a snake. The pheasants will make a great stew, and I can use the snake's gallbladder for medicinal purposes." Latham stood up and walked over to take a look. The pheasants were still warm. Steve glanced at Helga suspiciously. He hadn't seen her catch anything, and he didn't think she could have caught anything so deep in the forest. Peter whistled slowly. "Helga, did you really catch these?" She looked at him and frowned. "I'm a doctor, not a nun. Am I not allowed to hunt and eat meat?" Peter blushed and didn't know what to say. Ashley burst out laughing. "It would seem that Blackwing has finally met his match." Peter laughed. "I guess so. She definitely knows her stuff." Katie saw Helga and ran over to her. "Please, can you help my little rabbit? I found him in the field. He's hurt his leg." Helga glanced down at the ball of fur in Katie's arms. Yeah, let me see what I can do. She reached into her satchel and rummaged around before pulling out a light green plant. She took a stone, ground the plant into a paste, and then applied it to the little animal's wound. Then, she took a scarf from her bag and carefully wrapped it around the rabbit's leg. There, that should work. Take the scarf off in 2 days. He'll be better by then. Katie hugged Helga and skipped away happily as she clutched the rabbit tightly. Helga took a few more herbs from her satchel and handed them to the chef. Place these herbs inside the wild rabbit. They make the meat much softer and tastier. To everyone's amazement, Helga walked over and joined the chef at the fire. She began roasting the rabbit like a pro. She also made everything look so easy. And soon, the sufficient scent of rabbit wafted through the air. Katie stroked the small white rabbit in her arms, whispering, "Don't worry, I won't let them do anything to you." The group gathered around the fire pit, eyeing the meat hungrily. Jonathan and Steve were busy roasting their own rabbit over a fire, but it wasn't nearly as tempting as Helga's. Latham laughed. "Jonathan, no offense, but my vote goes to Helga." Esther pulled Nancy over to Helga's side. "And I think your wife agrees," she teased. Nancy winked at her husband. "Sweetie, I hope you don't mind, but I'll have to taste Helga's work of art. Only then can I decide which is best." Jonathan pretended to be upset. "Look at this. My wife has no faith in me." "Looks like I'll have to practice my cooking skills," he thought. Once her rabbit was ready, Helga removed it from the spit and placed it carefully onto a large platter. Steve looked at it with envy. Nancy tore off a piece and put it in her mouth. "This is absolutely divine. I've never tasted anything so good. Jonathan, you have to try this." He reluctantly agreed and chewed the meat thoughtfully. "You're right. Helga, your roasting skills are admirable." Everyone laughed. "My father taught me," she said lightly. "We often went rabbit hunting in the woods when I was young. I was in the mountains once for a long time and couldn't go home. I had to rely on these skills to survive." "You're truly remarkable," Nancy declared. "You seem to be good at everything." "Can I try some?" Katie asked shyly, still holding her rabbit. Helga nodded and cut her a piece. Katie tasted it and smiled happily. "This is delicious. Here, Emma, try it." Emma was hesitant, but finally agreed. She took the forkful of meat that Katie offered her, and her eyes lit up when she tasted the succulent rabbit. "It's really good." "Can you teach me how to make a rabbit roast, Helga?" Katie asked. Emma laughed. "There are many things you have yet to learn, Katie." She sat down by a tree and observed the group with satisfaction. Katie watched her silently, but looked away when she noticed Jonathan smiling at her. He was very observant, and she was afraid he could read her thoughts. She ran up to Steve. "You're the only one who hasn't had a piece. Come on, try it." He frowned, disappointed that Helga had one-upped him yet again. Is there nothing she can't do? He wondered. "Not right now, Katie. I'm still working on mine. You can eat it." She shrugged and took another bite. "Suit yourself. You have no idea what you're missing out on. These herbs really bring out the taste." Meanwhile, the kitchen staff were busy making a pot of pheasant stew over another fire. Helga went over and placed some fresh herbs she had gathered into the pot. The others looked in her basket and saw that she had gathered herbs for their meal and for medicinal purposes. The group ate a hearty lunch and mounted their horses again after resting for a while. Jonathan and Nancy galloped ahead with Esther and Xavier, while Katie and Emma rode behind them. The others trailed behind at a slower pace, enjoying the scenery and the warm sunshine on their backs. After returning to the stables, Jonathan suggested they play paintball. Ashley rolled her eyes. "You're on," Nancy exclaimed, "but only if you and I are on the same team." She knew her husband was an expert, and she had been wanting to play with him for a long time. Esther raised her hand. "Count me in." I'd love to play too. She knew both Nancy and Jonathan were fond of the game and couldn't wait to see the pros in action. The others nodded in agreement. What about you, Latham? Jonathan asked. You haven't said a word. The latter, remembering the time he had introduced Ashley to the game, broke into a smile. Okay, I'm in. Good, Jonathan said. We have 12 people, so we can split into 3 teams of 4. Each team's goal is to eliminate the other 2 teams. He quickly explained the rules. May the best team win, Nancy declared. How about randomly picking people for each team so that not all the pros end up on the same team? Latham suggested. He was hoping he would end up in Ashley's team. She had been ignoring him all day, and it was his only chance of talking to her and making amends. He had to set things straight with her before his marriage to Samantha. Nancy shot him a dirty look because he had ruined her plans of being on Jonathan's team. That's a great suggestion, Xavier said. Otherwise, everyone will want to be on Jonathan's team. Katie took out a piece of paper, tore it into 12 pieces, and wrote a name on each piece. She then placed them face down into her straw hat, mixed them up, and drew 4 names for each team. Emma burst out laughing. Katie, you're so organized. The latter turned red with embarrassment. Okay, read out the names of each team, Jonathan said. The first team is Jacob, Helga, Xavier, and Nancy, Katie announced. The second team is Peter, Ashley, Latham, and me. The third is Jonathan, Emma, Steve, and Esther. Nancy scowled and whispered to Esther. Darn it, I was hoping to be on Jonathan's team. Mine's gonna lose. Don't be so sure. Helga could be an expert in the game. She seems to be good at everything. Do you want to trade places with me? Her friend laughed. Not on your life. Don't worry, sis. I promise to lead our team to victory. Jacob, who had overheard their conversation, declared with a wink. Nancy groaned, knowing her brother had never played paintball before. She thought even this second team was stronger than hers. Both Peter and Latham were experienced players, and Ashley, even though she had only played paintball once before, was very competitive and would easily get the hang of it. And she had proven she was a good shot with all the rabbits she had hunted that morning. Nancy sidled up to Jonathan. You have to go easy on us, okay? He kissed her on the forehead. Whatever you say. She laughed and went over to join her teammates. They went over the rules again in detail and got their equipment and safety gear. The 3 teams then headed off in different directions. Ashley was looking forward to the game. The environment was ideal, and she was keen on winning. Peter led his team around the ranch. Ashley and Katie followed while Latham held up the rear. They made their way carefully and quietly around some haystacks until they saw their first opponent, Emma. Katie froze in her tracks and hoped Peter would go easy on her, but the latter had already raised his paintball marker and was pointing it straight at Emma. He fired off a shot, but someone on Emma's team grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a shrub in the nick of time. Peter quickly hid and signaled to the others to do the same. I wonder who saved her, he muttered. Let's split up. Ashley, you come with me. Latham, you and Katie go around the other way. Ashley nodded and followed him. Peter was wearing his camouflage outfit, and she was surprised by how much he resembled Latham. They were both about the same height and build, and even their movements were similar. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the paintball that whizzed past her head. Luckily, she managed to dodge it. But when she looked around, Peter was already gone. She heard the sounds of shots in the distance, followed by someone announcing that 2 players had been eliminated. She carefully made her way around a haystack to see what was going on when she suddenly became aware of someone behind her. Stunned, she turned around and raised her paintball marker to shoot, but stopped when she saw Latham. She lowered her arm, and they stood staring at one another for several seconds. Soon, they heard the sound of approaching footsteps, so he quickly grabbed her and pulled her into the haystack. He motioned to her to stay silent. A minute later, Katie screamed, I'm dead! Latham peeked out of the haystack aimed his paintball marker, and shot. "Who was it?" Ashley whispered. "Jacob," Latham replied. "He's out of the game." His body was pressed against hers, and he quickly apologized. "I'm sorry. Did I hurt you?" "No." She instinctively moved further away from him, but felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She drew in her breath and winced. "What is it? What's wrong?" he asked with concern. She broke out in a cold sweat and didn't move. She pointed at her abdomen, and he carefully touched the spot. She pulled back and looked at him in astonishment. "What are you doing?" "I'm just trying to help. Is it your stomach? Are you feeling ill?" Feeling his warm breath and closeness, she turned red with embarrassment. He touched her sore spot again. "Is this where it hurts?" She nodded and let him rub it gently until the pain went away. Once she felt better, she suddenly grabbed his hand, pushed it away, and stood up. "How dare you? Do you think you can just take advantage of me whenever you please?" He was stunned. "I was just trying to help, Ashley. You're getting married, and your fiancée is pregnant with your child. It's bad enough you led me on before you met her, but to try and seduce me when you're about to become a husband and a father is just despicable." Latham drew away and looked at her apologetically. "I'm sorry, but I think you're reading too much into this." She glared at him for a long time. "Just do me a favor and stay away from me. I've moved on and have no intention of reliving the past. Don't worry, I'll come to your stupid wedding, but only because everyone else is going. I don't want anything to do with you after that." He raised his hand. "Stop, please. Just don't say anything else. Do you love that woman? Or are you—" Before she could finish, he suddenly grabbed her around the waist with one hand and kissed her on the lips. His other hand held the back of her head, pressing her into him. Ashley was shocked and tried to break free of his grip, but the more she struggled, the harder he pressed her against him. Several thoughts raced through her mind. She couldn't believe this was happening to her. Latham felt an overwhelming sense of déjà vu as he kissed her. He breathed in the scent of her skin and remembered the last time they had embraced. He had no idea why he was doing it, but it felt right. Am I crazy? He wondered. Why can't I let go of the past? She's right. I'm getting married. So then, why am I kissing her? He suddenly dreaded the future. Latham's lips remained locked onto Ashley's until he felt a sharp pain. He cried out, pulled away, and realized that his bottom lip was bleeding. Ashley's chest was heaving in anger. She had bitten him hard, and he noticed that her lips also had traces of blood on them. "How could you do this to me?" she shouted, seething. "You're a scumbag, you know that? I hate you with all my heart." She pushed him away so aggressively that he stumbled backward. He finally sat down and shook his head in bewilderment. He had no clue what had possessed him to kiss her. Ashley glared at him, but said nothing more. An awkward silence descended on them. She was trembling and didn't know whether it was because of her anger or because she realized that she still had feelings for him. She brushed herself off and was about to climb out of the haystack when he said, "Ashley, I'm really sorry. You're right. I am a scumbag for what I did just now. Trust me, I wasn't planning on kissing you. I just wanted to have one last heart-to-heart before my wedding." But Ashley had stopped listening. She emerged from the haystack and removed some pieces of hay from her hair. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't notice that someone was pointing a paintball marker at her back. Before she could react, she was shot and eliminated from the game. Disappointed and furious, she started walking back toward the main building when she heard a cry behind her. She turned around and saw Helga disappear around the haystack. Helga followed her and saw Latham emerge a minute later, covered in blue paint. Helga had shot him. Helga looked at them apologetically. "I'm sorry. I saw Ashley coming out of the haystack just now looking disheveled, and I figured someone else must have been in there with her." Oh, great. Maybe she overheard everything, Ashley thought. She wished she had left before Latham had had a chance to kiss her, and wondered whether this thing between them, whatever it was, would be over. She heard Peter screaming into her earpiece. No way! You guys have both been eliminated? I guess I'm on my own now. Latham heard him too. We're counting on you, buddy. Suddenly, the sound of another gunshot filled the air. Looks like someone else has been eliminated, Helga observed. Nancy was hiding behind a tree, thinking she had been pretty lucky up to that point. She and her team had split up, and she had already shot 2 opponents. She knew that she and Helga were left. Esther had shot Xavier, and Jacob had also been eliminated. Just as she was trying to determine how many people were left on Jonathan's team, she heard someone behind her. She turned around and saw her husband pointing his paintball marker straight at her. She looked at him in the eye, and he lowered his arm. She blinked. Aren't you going to shoot me? He smiled and walked over to her. How could I? Don't you want to win? I'll help you eliminate Peter. Nancy laughed. You mean you'll help me even though we're on different teams? He nodded, pulled his mask off, and kissed her. Just stay here and rest. I'll take care of everything. She smiled, thinking he even looked handsome in camouflage gear. She threw her arms around his neck and kissed him passionately. My hero. Okay, I'll stay here while you shoot Peter. At your service, ma'am. He put his helmet back on and dashed off. She heard the sound of a gunshot a few moments later, followed by cries of surrender. She laughed, thinking, my husband will fight to the death for me. She heard Peter's voice through her earpiece. It's over. My team has been wiped out completely. 2 more gunshots rang out. Nancy, are you still alive? Helga asked. Jonathan and I just shot each other. We've both been eliminated. I'm still here. What about the others on Jonathan's team? They've all been killed. She heard her husband say, That leaves you. Nancy clapped her hands excitedly. Hooray! I'm the last person standing. Further away, Peter removed his mask and sighed with exasperation. Why did you target me, man? He asked Jonathan. It's not fair. You snuck up on me on purpose. Jonathan looked at him innocently and burst out laughing. Don't blame me. My wife ordered me to eliminate you. Whose team were you on anyway? Ashley grumbled, approaching them. We'll get you next time. The group gathered and removed their safety gear. It's official, Jonathan declared. Nancy, what's your secret? Esther asked. Her friend shook her head. I'm not revealing my tactics. All I can tell you is that someone had my back. They all laughed. It was already evening, and they were tired and hungry, so they ate a delicious meal of grilled chicken and headed back home. Just as he and Nancy stepped through the door, Jonathan received a call from his spy in Cuba.
Sir, I just heard that Alexander has escaped.
Jonathan was shocked. How could that happen? You mean from prison?
Yes, it happened while he was being transferred to another prison in a van. There was an accident on the road, and he was injured. They sent him to the prison hospital, but I called and found out that he never arrived there.
There's no way the accident was a fluke, Jonathan said, frowning. There are 3 explanations, he thought. Matthew orchestrated the whole thing and rescued his son because he couldn't bear to see him go to jail. The other possibility is that Alexander's people rescued him. Much as he hated to consider the third option, he believed that perhaps Gavin had organized it. He considered each possibility and eliminated the first one. He knew that Matthew was willing to sacrifice his own flesh and blood to save the family's good name. And rescuing Alexander wouldn't do anything to help his cause. Besides, his uncle had put all his faith in him. The more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that Gavin was behind the rescue operation, especially since they hadn't seen him since he had fallen off the cliff. Now that Xavier and Esther's engagement party in Cuba was fast approaching, Gavin had a reason to act fast to get his way. His time was running out. Jonathan immediately sent some people over to Cuba to investigate Alexander's disappearance and to find out whether Gavin had been involved. Meanwhile, a judge in Havana ruled that Alexander would receive the death sentence when he was caught again. News of the sentence quickly spread on social media and became the top trending topic. Jonathan was nervous. He knew that his cousin had to be captured as soon as possible, so he could be executed. It was too risky to let him roam freely. The day after they got back from their hunting trip, Jonathan went to meet a client for lunch and was surprised to bump into Brock on the street. He had heard about his recent engagement to the Pullman's eldest daughter, Lindsay, and his return to his family's company. Brock was equally surprised to see him and nodded in greeting. Jonathan smiled politely and continued walking. Just as he was about to turn the corner, he heard Brock calling after him. "Jonathan, do you have a minute?" The latter stopped and retraced his steps. "How are you doing, Brock?" "I'm okay. I just wanted to ask you about Ashley. How has she been lately?" His sister had been ignoring him ever since he had announced his engagement to Lindsay, and he hadn't seen her since his return to New York. "Why don't you ask her yourself?" Jonathan asked. "She's your sister." Brock shrugged. "She's not very keen on talking to me lately." "What about Hannah? I heard she moved to another city, but I don't know where." "She's doing great. Keeping busy," Jonathan replied. "I don't think she'll be coming to your wedding, though." Brock nodded. "I know. Well, it was good seeing you." He was going to meet a client who had treated him terribly after he had been kicked out of his company. Now, the man greeted him enthusiastically and congratulated him on his engagement. Brock forced a smile, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about Hannah. After returning to the States, he had done some digging to find out what crisis her family's business was facing. It was an established company, and though competition was intense and its market share was being squeezed, he was confident it would survive. He was grateful for having his old job back. His father had been right. He was nothing without his family's support. He sat in the meeting and looked at his hands. He still couldn't believe he was going to get married. His client was talking to him, but he barely heard a word he said. He squeezed his hands so hard that his fingers turned white. The client smiled. "You must really be looking forward to your wedding. You've been lost in thought the whole time." Brock's assistant nodded. "His fiancée is gorgeous and smart. Brock's marrying into a good family. It's a match made in heaven." Brock looked up in a daze. He felt anything but excited about his upcoming nuptials. He cleared his throat and looked at the folder in front of him. "Shall we get back to business?" The meeting lasted over 3 hours, and he felt physically and emotionally drained afterward. His client suggested they meet for dinner, but the last thing Brock wanted was to get drunk and vomit that night. He politely declined the invitation and went home, wondering why he'd been feeling so depressed lately. Ashley hadn't returned home yet, but Cleo was waiting for him. Brock had found her in a forest not far from Hannah's apartment after the fire in Santa Fe. He had taken her back to his apartment. The cat rubbed against his legs and meowed, indicating that she was hungry. Brock opened a can of tuna, poured the contents into Cleo's dish, and watched her eat. He suddenly recalled the time he had lived next door to Hannah and had given her cat tuna to lure Cleo to his apartment. Hannah had always wondered why Cleo was never hungry when she had fed her. He sighed and wondered what would have happened if he had gotten into the car accident that day and lost his memory. Would we still be married? He thought wistfully. Cleo looked up at him and licked her lips. She had left only a little bit of tuna on her plate. Brock laughed and stroked her back. Cleo purred and rubbed up against his leg. Ashley arrived home just then and saw Brock stroking the cat with a strange expression on his face. She hadn't seen that look for a while and wondered whether he was reminiscing. Her brother looked up. "Hey, Ashley, It's good to see you again. Cleo purred and gobbled up the last piece of tuna fish. Ashley gave a small smile, but it faded as Brock's expression turned serious. He seemed to hesitate before speaking, his face a canvas of conflicting emotions. He took a deep breath. Ash, there's something I need to tell you, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Ashley felt a knot form in her stomach. What is it? She asked. Brock swallowed hard and then said, I'm getting married. Ashley shot her brother a dirty look and went to her room. He followed her. Come on, sis. Don't be like this. Let's sit and talk. What's there to talk about? She demanded angrily. You've obviously made up your mind. You're going to turn out to be just like our father. You have no right to judge me. I'm your brother, and I expect some support. Why can't you be more understanding? She pursed her lips, but said nothing. I'll explain everything soon enough, he added. But in the meantime, you have to stop pretending like I don't exist. He felt weak and helpless and wished he could be honest with her. She had always looked up to him as a big brother who protected her from the world's evils and made sure she was okay. He couldn't stand to have his image shattered. She just stood there, frowning. He noticed that she was considerably thinner. Did you lose weight? He asked, concerned. She looked down at the floor, not knowing what to say. She had lost several pounds since her surgery after the miscarriage. The Thom had once jokingly told her that she was heavy, even though she had been thin for her height even then. But now she looked like a skeleton. Ashley, what's going on? Brock asked. You've lost a lot of weight. He hadn't seen her for over a month, so the change in her weight was blindingly obvious. He knew something was wrong. She met his gaze and shrugged. Nothing's going on. Her tone had changed, and it was much friendlier now. Though she hated him for having gotten engaged, she reminded herself that Brock was still her brother and cared about her. Have you been too busy to eat? He asked. Is Jonathan overworking you? It has nothing to do with him, she snapped. Then what? For Pete's sake, just tell me, Ashley. It's all your fault. I've been so worried about you lately. You know I can't eat when I'm stressed. He looked at her in astonishment. You've been worried about me? Of course, you moron. What else? Okay, well, I hope you've gotten over it. I'm back and working now, and I'm engaged. All is right in the world. Why don't we go and grab a bite to eat? You look like you could use some food. She shook her head. I'm tired. I just want to stay here. Okay, well then, I'll go and get something. He grabbed his wallet and keys and left. Ashley sat down on the couch, put her feet up, and sighed. Cleo jumped onto her lap and purred, looking for a comfortable spot. She stroked her. Do you miss Hannah, sweetie? I bet you do. Cleo licked her paw and looked at Ashley with her big green eyes. Brock returned a half hour later with takeout, and they sat down at the kitchen table to eat. I can't believe you're engaged, Ashley said after a while. When's the wedding? He shrugged. We haven't set a date yet. I'm focusing on my career now. I've missed out on a lot, and I need to get back into the swing of things again. And what about Hannah? Have you heard from her? I guess she's okay. I don't know. She hasn't contacted me. I'm sorry. I know you really wanted to get back together with her, Ashley said slowly. But if you think marrying Lindsay is the right thing to do, I'll support your decision. I just hope you won't regret it later. Brock wiped his mouth with a napkin. Thanks, sis. I appreciate it. The only thing he regretted was divorcing Hannah, but he knew it couldn't be undone. He had to move on and marry Lindsay. They finished eating, washed the dishes, and sat down on the couch to watch something on television. Brock flipped through the channels, but nothing interesting was on. Well, why don't we play a video game instead? Ashley suggested. He shrugged, and put the remote down on the coffee table. Just then, he heard a familiar voice on TV introducing the Border City Band from Riverside City. He looked up in astonishment and saw Ezra and his band members appear on stage. He realized that they must have made it to the finals of the talent show. During his trip to Brazil, he discovered that Ezra had become very popular on social media and had over 1 million followers. The singer was wearing a black t-shirt and jeans. His hair had been slicked back, and he looked like he was wearing makeup. The audience clapped and cheered when they saw him and waved banners with his name on them. Brock scowled and was about to change the channel when he suddenly saw Hannah appear on the stage with a guitar. She was wearing a tight white dress and looked positively stunning. He gasped, recalling how he had almost lost her in the explosion in Santa Fe. He had found out several days later that she was okay, but it wasn't enough. He needed to see her for himself to know that she was okay. He desperately wanted her back. Brock stared at the television screen as Hannah took her place among the other band members. She stood out and instantly attracted everyone's attention. Loud cheers could be heard from the audience. Hannah smiled and nodded. The stage lights dimmed, and she slowly began strumming her guitar, her eyes focused on her fingers. The other band members joined in with their instruments a few moments later, and a lively prelude filled the auditorium. Ezra picked up the microphone and started singing in his deep, throaty voice. The fans went wild. The song was beautiful, and the musical instruments perfectly complemented his magnificent voice. Brock couldn't tear his eyes away from Hannah, and a wave of jealousy washed over him. He wondered whether something was going on between her and Ezra. Even he had to admit that the singer was extremely attractive, and he couldn't blame Hannah for falling for him. The atmosphere on stage was electric. The audience sang along with Ezra and moved slowly to the music's rhythm. His piece came to an end, and Brock's breath caught in his throat as Hannah went up to the microphone. It was only the second time he had heard her sing. She had been timid and hesitant the first time, which was understandable. But now, her voice rang out clearly and beautifully. The other band members stopped playing, and it was only Hannah and her guitar. Her haunting voice sent shivers down Brock's spine. She sang about love, loneliness, and loss. Though he couldn't quite catch the lyrics, he understood that the song was about a war hero who had returned only to find that the love of his life had moved on. Inconsolable, he drank himself to death and was buried alone in a cemetery. Hannah strummed a few more chords, and her voice faded away. She then bowed and waved at the fans, who burst into thunderous applause. The other band members came forward and waved before leaving the stage. Ashley glanced at her brother, whose eyes were glued to the television screen. "I can't believe that was Hannah up there." Brock swallowed and slowly nodded. "Yes, she was amazing, wasn't she? When did she join a band? I never pictured her as a performer. Doesn't she suffer from stage fright?" "No, she doesn't. I heard her singing on stage with this very band a few months ago." Ashley looked at him, shocked. "You mean you remember?" She had thought he had regained some of his memory, but she hadn't been sure. He met her gaze. "I do. I remember everything." His sister was speechless. "Finally," she said softly. "Then you must be devastated right now." He hung his head and said nothing. "Am I devastated?" Brock mused. "How could I not be?" He didn't answer his sister's question. Instead, he got to his feet and said, "I'm going to take a shower. Don't watch TV until too late. You should get an early night." "Oh, okay." Ashley was no longer in the mood to watch TV anyway. She picked up her phone and sent a message to her online gaming friend. "Are you free right now? I'll see you in the game." Later that night, Brock turned on the computer in his room and searched for information on Border City, Ezra's band. He found a detailed entry and began to read. Hannah Marsh, a friend of the band's lead singer Ezra Fitzgerald, has appeared as a guest singer on several occasions. It has been confirmed that she will be performing with them at their upcoming concerts. Brock searched for the talent show that he had watched earlier on TV and found a replay. He pressed play and watched it from beginning to end. Then, he saved the entire video onto a folder on his hard drive. In the folder, he had also stored some photos that Ashley had secretly taken of Hannah when they had been in Santa Fe. She had sent them to him afterward, and he had made sure to file them somewhere safe. He and Hannah had been married for some time, but he had precious few photos of the two of them together. He had always imagined that he would have all the time in the world to take photos of her. But their time together had ended too soon. He was currently engaged to Lindsay, but she was responsible for her own division within her family's business, so she wouldn't be moving to New York anytime soon. Brock felt like he was living in the past. Nothing had changed except for the fact that he was no longer married to Hannah. Ashley believed that her brother was working harder recently than he ever had when they had been working together. Often, she would get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and she would see a glow of light coming from his room. That night was no exception. After she left her room, she saw Brock's light was still on. What's he up to? She wondered. Is he planning something? The next morning, she tried to coax it out of him, but his lips were sealed, and she got no useful information. That evening, one of Brock's clients invited him to a concert. He took the subway, and when he arrived at the venue, he saw that the underground parking lot was half empty. I should have driven, he thought with a shrug. When the concert ended, he found a very different situation. The parking lot was completely full, and all the surrounding roads were blocked. That's strange, he thought. It was a great gig, but this place only seats 200 people. Where have all these people come from? Just then, he heard a scream coming from a crowd that had gathered near the entrance of the adjacent venue. Ezra! We love you, Ezra! He stopped next to a person at the back of the group and asked, What's going on? Don't you know? Border City is about to hold its first concert. None of us out here could get a hold of tickets, so we're hoping we can hear it from outside. Brock's heart missed a beat. Are they all going to be here? Of course. The woman looked at the time on her phone. I can't talk anymore. I have to go. It's about to start. She left and started to shove her way through the crowd toward the front. It was 5 minutes to 8, and Brock guessed the concert was due to start at 8 o'clock. He felt a little annoyed that he hadn't known about it earlier, and realized he had been too busy. He hadn't even noticed how popular Border City had become in such a short period of time. He did a quick online search for tickets and found that they were, indeed, all sold out. A moment later, the concert began, and the music could be heard through the walls of the venue, accompanied by loud screams and cheering. He heard Ezra's smooth voice, and the fans outside joined in with both the singing and the screaming. Brock pushed his way to the front of the crowd and found a handful of ticket scalpers. He was desperate to get inside, so he willingly paid an extraordinarily high price for a ticket. Then, he made his way to the door and walked in. The concert lights were dazzling, and it took a moment for his eyes to adjust. When, finally, they did, he saw Ezra on stage, wearing a body-hugging sleeveless t-shirt. The female fans in the mosh pit began screaming incessantly. Brock found a seat and sat down. From his position, he could clearly see the band members on the stage, but Hannah wasn't there. He felt a little disappointed, but then he figured that she would probably be coming on later. I guess she can't sing every song, he thought. He sat through 3 consecutive songs, and there was still no sign of Hannah. But then, after the 3rd track, the stage darkened, and an ethereal female voice filled the hall. The audience fell silent as Hannah descended from the rafters, suspended by strings. She was wearing a long white dress. An array of light illuminated her head like a halo. Her skirt was encrusted with diamonds, which sparkled like silver stars under the light. Her face had been made up with special makeup that emphasized her eyes. The distance between her and Brock was only about 60 feet. He looked around and saw that most of the fans were waving glow sticks, which cast a dull light on their faces, and he hoped that she wouldn't spot him in the audience. This is the third time I've heard her sing, and this time I finally get to see it live, he thought, and he stared, transfixed by her presence on the stage. But then he became aware of his left hand, where there would soon be a ring, and he was reminded that the 60 feet between them was an insurmountable gap. He sighed sadly and listened to the perfect combination of her voice with Ezra's as they performed their mesmerizing duet. The audience in the mosh pit swayed in time to the melody and waved their glow sticks and phone torches from side to side. Brock looked around and realized he was the only one not waving something. The song ended, and Hannah and Ezra bowed to the audience. Just then, to Brock's horror, Hannah looked straight at him and fixed her gaze on him. Her body stiffened, and he held his breath and waited for a sign of recognition in her eyes. After a moment, she looked away and turned around to leave the stage. He let out a sigh of relief. Hannah came back onto the stage to sing 2 more songs. As the concert came to an end, Ezra excitedly thanked Hannah for joining the band for their first concert. And then, he thanked the audience for making his dream of being a pop star come true. The audience began to slowly file out of the hall, but many remained and called out Hannah and Ezra's names. After several minutes, their patience paid off, and the band returned to the stage. Hannah had changed into a simple blue dress. Brock remained in his seat and watched her as she happily talked to the fans. She looked like the woman he used to know, but simultaneously, she seemed to be a completely different person. After a while, he left his seat and headed out of the concert hall. He walked to the nearest subway station. He had planned to go straight home, but then he realized that he was only 1 stop away from Hannah's parents' place. So on impulse, that's where he decided to go. He got off the train at their stop and made his way toward their apartment building. As he went through the main doors, a familiar figure appeared in front of him. Ever since the day of the explosion in Santa Fe, when Hannah had been kidnapped, she hadn't returned to the city. She had been worried about her cat Cleo, so she had asked Jonathan to help her find her. He and others had searched for a long time, but they hadn't been able to find the animal, and in the end, they had given up. Hannah missed Cleo and hoped she would be okay. She also felt bad about having left her landlady in the lurch, but she couldn't bring herself to go back there. She had considered settling in another city, so when she received the invitation from Ezra to join the band, she jumped at the chance. She enjoyed singing with the band, and as long as they wanted her, she was happy to be there. When Ezra told her about the concert in New York, she had been delighted to be a part of it. The concert had been a huge success, and at the end, she was exhausted. Her parents lived nearby, and since she hadn't been to visit them for some time, she had arranged to stay with them for a day or 2. She knew they would have supper ready for her when she got back, so she had packed her things up and left the concert hall. Ezra had offered to give her a ride to her parents' place, and she had gratefully accepted. "I'll see you tomorrow," he had said as she got out of the car, and then he drove off. Hannah walked into the lobby and felt a chill run up her spine. She sensed another person standing behind her, and she spun around in fear and came face to face with Brock. She looked at him in shock, her jaw hanging open. "What the hell's he doing here?" she thought. Brock spoke first. "Hey, Hannah." She looked at him suspiciously. "Why are you here?" "I went to your concert. You sang beautifully." He stared into her eyes. Hannah was surprised to hear that he had attended the concert, but she forced a smile. "Thanks. Do you remember the last time I called you, and you were about to go on stage for the first time?" Hannah remembered it clearly, and she wondered why he would bring that up. "Of course. You sang so well that day, and I just knew I had to come to Riverside to see you perform live." He paused for a moment. I got in the car and drove, but that was when I had the accident. Hannah hadn't expected him to say that, and she looked away apologetically. I'm sorry I was the cause of your accident. I hope it wasn't serious. He shook his head. Hannah, I was stupid. I was drunk, and I drove the car. I don't want you to feel guilty about that. It was my fault. Hannah had a history of depression. Whenever she suffered a relapse, it had usually been because she felt responsible for something. She hadn't taken her medication for the past 2 weeks, and she could feel the anxiety starting to build up. She took a deep breath. Of course, I know that. That's when I lost my memories of you. But the explosion in Santa Fe brought it all back again. Hannah gazed at him with confusion in her eyes. She still didn't know where he was going with his train of thought. Recently, she had tried to put all thoughts of him out of her head. She hadn't once taken the initiative to search for any information about him, yet some snippets had managed to find their way to her. She had found out that he was engaged to the eldest daughter of the Pullman family and had retaken control of Obsidian Industries. Her gaze landed on his left hand as if she expected to see a wedding ring there already. His eyes followed hers, and he instinctively put his hand in his pocket. He felt as if he had taken a heavy blow to his heart. Are you all right now? He asked, distracting her from the subject of his impending marriage. I mean, after the explosion and everything. Yeah, I'm pretty good. An awkward silence followed, and then she said, If there's nothing else, I need to go now. Brock clenched his fists and summoned up the courage to ask what he really wanted to ask her. Do you think you'll ever get married again? Hannah looked at him with bemusement. What do you mean? Do you have a boyfriend? Her mind flashed to his engagement again, and she felt a sense of rejection. I don't think that has anything to do with you. There was a hint of resentment in her voice. He fell silent and put his hands in the air in a gesture of surrender. Hannah stared at him for a few seconds, and then she pressed the elevator button. She was relieved when the doors opened immediately, and she took a step forward. But before she could get into the elevator, Brock reached out and grabbed her arm. He spun her around and pulled her into his embrace. She struggled to free herself. Hannah, please, Brock said desperately. Don't get a boyfriend. Wait for me. She stopped resisting and stared at him in disbelief. Then she burst into sarcastic laughter. Are you kidding me right now? You want me to wait for you while you go off and get married to someone else? Why the hell should I do that? Brock's words got stuck in his throat as he realized how unreasonable his request must have sounded to her. Let go of me. She began to struggle again, and her eyes filled with anger. Leave me alone. Brock felt another stab in his heart, and he let her go. She shrugged herself free of his grasp and pressed the elevator button again. The doors opened, and she stepped inside. She quickly pressed the button for her parents' floor and willed the doors to close before he could try and stop her again. The doors closed, and she breathed a sigh of relief. Brock stood outside the elevator and watched Hannah disappear. Then, he took a few steps back, leaned against the wall, and put his head in his hands. For the next few days, Brock was busier than ever. He had neither the time nor the energy for anything other than work. Ashley found that the Obsidian Industries project seemed to have stabilized and assumed that it was down to the effort that Brock had been putting in. One day, when she was tidying up the living room, she came across some documents for a deal that another company had submitted. When she saw the name of the company, she finally understood what was going on. It was Brock's own company, the company that he had started himself after being kicked out of Obsidian. So that's what he's been up to, she thought. Secret deals. Her newly found discovery made her think of the recent projects that the Davis Group had gotten involved in, and she wondered if they might be looking for partners. Her heart beat fast, and the next day, she went straight to Jonathan's office. She knocked on the door and let herself in. "Hey, Ashley," Jonathan said, looking up from his paperwork. "What can I do for you?" It was the first time Ashley had used her work for personal gain, and she felt a little nervous. She hesitated briefly. It's like this," she said finally. "I know we haven't exactly been looking for a supplier recently, but I saw this project that my brother's been working on, and I think it might be just right for us. So, are you trying to help your brother out here?" Jonathan asked, interrupting her. A faint smile formed on his lips. "He doesn't know." Ashley looked away, feeling embarrassed. "I know I shouldn't be asking you, but I have to try and help him." "I'm guessing things aren't going as well for him as he'd imagined." "Yeah, and I have a feeling he might be planning all of this for Hannah." Ashley took a deep breath and looked at her half-brother, hopefully. "Can you help him? If only for Hannah's sake." Jonathan rubbed his temples and let out a long exhalation. "I'm not sure, Ashley. This is just your guess." "I know it's just a guess, and he hasn't said anything to me. But whether or not we can help him is no loss to us either way." "Let me take a look at the quality of his products," Jonathan said. "If they're as good as his competitors, I'll give him priority." "Really? That's great!" Ashley rushed over and gave him a hug. "You're such a good brother. I love you to death." "I'm not promising anything," Jonathan said firmly, extracting himself from her embrace. "Not until he proves he's worthy." Ashley grinned and clapped her hands with joy. "Oh, I'll make sure he does that." She was about to skip happily out of Jonathan's office when he stopped her. "How's your love life going, Ashley?" he asked unexpectedly. "Oh," she replied, stopping in her tracks. "It's not." "Would you like me to introduce you to someone?" Jonathan asked. Ashley looked at him with a mix of surprise and excitement. "Sure, but he has to be as great as you." Jonathan chuckled. "As great as me? Well then, I should just give up right now, because no one can come close to me." "You narcissist," Ashley grinned. "Anyway, it doesn't matter. If you can introduce me to someone, then do it. And if you don't find the right person, I'll blame you for the rest of my life. You'll never live it down." As they joked, Jack came into the office. "Sir, Oh, Miss Porter, I didn't realize you were here." "Ah, Jack, just the man I wanted to see," Jonathan said. "My sister needs a boyfriend. Can I leave that with you?" "What?" Jack looked at his boss and Ashley in turn, his face full of confusion. Did he just ask me to find his sister a boyfriend? He thought, perplexed. I'm supposed to be his personal assistant, not a matchmaker. But I bet I know where this is going, just because I've been single for a few years. His thoughts were interrupted by Ashley. "Hey, Jack, you can help, right? My brother has tasked you with this mission, so I guess you have to give it a go." Jack stared at her helplessly and put down the documents in his hands. I'll do my best." Ashley clapped her hands together in glee, and then she left.